Scared of heights? How about the ocean? Claustrophobic? Maybe you're also scared of Lovecraftian abominations with Scottish accents? How about combining all of these into one game? I'm Joe, a former games industry professional, and today we're looking at Still Wakes the Deep on Xbox's Game Pass for PC. Still Wakes the Deep is a fairly new title, so spoiler alert for this whole video essentially. However, for you in the future, it was released in the year 2024. 2024, so far, was both a horrible and awesome year for gaming. Helldivers 2 and Palworld stole the show for most of the start of the year, while layoffs decimated the industry, me included, resulting in over 10,000 people left without jobs. Still Wakes the Deep came in halfway through the year at a time where people were mostly sticking to games that were 6 years or older. Tough crowd, am I right?
That's just brilliant.
Developed by The Chinese Room, who also developed Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and published by Secret Mode, Still Wakes the Deep was a project worked on by a large amount of people from the Zumo group. This game is described as a narrative horror game, which I would agree with 100%, as it is essentially a tour with a horror story unfolding around you. There's not much interaction to be had apart from QuickTime events and some stealth/running gameplay, but I will get into my opinion on that later on. The story takes place in the 1970s on an offshore oil rig in the North Sea off the coast of Scotland. You play as an electrician from Glasgow nicknamed Kaz. You and your crewmates are experiencing a normal day when all of a sudden you essentially end up in the middle of a Lovecraft novel and must survive. When I started this up, the menu alone was enough to send chills down my spine. It was a sign of things to come. I was ready for a horrifying experience, and I got one, in the form of choppy frames and weird motion blur. Now this might have been on me, but it really could have done with a benchmark in the settings before letting me start the game. After 20 plus minutes, I was ready to roll. The main gameplay is very simple. You go from point A to point B by walking, and while doing that there may be some QuickTime events, or if you're really unfortunate, an otherworldly abomination.
Dobby!
It pretty much plays out in the style of Alien Isolation, in that you have to get past these monsters to get to the next checkpoint, and that may involve hiding, stealth movement, or in some cases just outright running. However, unlike Alien Isolation, the only other mechanic outside of running is throwing items to distract the monster. Also, unlike Alien Isolation, where the threat of the alien is constant, these monsters are sort of limited to their area. To give an example of this, here's one of the crew. Or was one of the crew. Maybe a bit of both. Once you pass this area, the monster will not follow you. They are limited to the level they're on. Some monsters make repeat appearances, however it's the same thing of, it's almost scripted, and you feel safe and secure knowing the monster is no longer a threat once you turn that valve and finish the checkpoint. The gameplay can also get a little bit dull in my opinion. I didn't need to use lockers, and once I figured out the pattern of move from safe space A to B to C, and if monster gets stuck, throw a hammer and make it run away, it took me out of the game a bit. There was one monster that broke this a tiny bit, and that was that giant head that I had no clue where he was going to pop up. Horrible, nasty. Oh, wait, that's your boss. There were a lot of QuickTime events, and probably way too much jumping and then holding on to something. This was definitely overused in this game, considering the developers wanted to emphasise this character is not an action hero, and here he is jumping onto a helicopter, something I do on my way to work. Something I do need to bring up as well is the use of yellow in this game, and I'm not talking about the hit song by Coldplay. It can help you in that there was one place I did get stuck and didn't see where to go as it wasn't yellow, but it also takes you out the immersion a bit as you're just following the yellow brick road to get to the next point. And it makes it more obvious that you're just on a track. Still Wakes the Deep will be receiving an update that includes an option to reduce the number of yellow markers in the future, so they clearly realised this was a problem. Another thing that stuck out like a sore thumb to me is mechanics that aren't used. I mentioned the lockers earlier that I didn't have to use at all, but there was also a heater that seemed like it was going to be a big mechanic in the game. You know, don't get too cold or you die. However, I only saw it again 2 other times at the very end. It was almost like they forgot it was a thing. You also kick a door at the very beginning, and then that mechanic is never used again. It's really bizarre considering there are so many locked doors in this game. The final thing I want to point out, and I really don't want to seem like I'm ranting here,
It's a fucking understatement.
is that you run like a Scooby-Doo character for some reason, and the running doesn't really feel like running. However, this could have been intentional to make it feel like you're powerless and you're not getting away from the monster. I will admit that the gameplay did make me feel very uncomfortable, and there were times where I really didn't want to carry on. I did persevere though, like a brave boy, and I deserve my plaudits for that, so like, subscribe, comment. I must point out though, that even though this game's strength does not lie in the gameplay, it doesn't matter. The gameplay is more a vehicle for telling a story and forcing you straight into the horror despite you wanting to run away. The setting, bleak and grey, yet full of life. The visuals really do make you feel part of that time. There are newspapers, posters, even lovely Christmas decorations, and the characters really do look human. It's hard to explain, but you know someone who's exactly like this person in real life, and the Unreal Engine 5 really helps realise this vision. Well, some of the humans look good. I do think, however, this was down to some issues I was having with the game's settings. Talking about things that don't look human, the monsters were absolutely horrifying. Just lumps of flesh with weird tentacle things. Some looked more spider-like, others just indescribable horrors, which is exactly what Lovecraftian horror is. Just, I don't know man, it was so scary I can't even describe it. Don't ask me to describe it, it was just so scary man, you get the gist. The main horror, which doesn't have a name, isn't really describable and is turning all your crewmates into monsters, is everywhere, all over the rig, ranging from big fleshy tentacle things to human-like things, to the more beautiful and awe-inspiring, back round to massive otherworldly horror. It evolves as the game progresses, but it remains true to its main theme. The world itself does a really good job of making you uncomfortable. The harsh seas below that are unforgiving and brutal. The deeper depths of the oil rig that make you want to turn the game off and go outside. Trust me, every time I opened a door and was on the surface, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Moving on to the audio side of things. Music was on point, the main theme sent chills down my spine, and there was even what I believe was a Gaelic ballad in the credits, so massive props to the developers for respecting the culture. Talking about respecting the culture, the voice acting was superb, on point, it was accurate as opposed to being a random dude doing a Scottish accent.
Aye. Alright.
This also crosses over to the monsters. They're still slightly human, and there's a really odd feeling when you hear them speaking. For the rest of the noises, you have howls, moans, creaking, all sorts. You can't tell whether it's the rig or the monster, but maybe it's an indication that the rig itself is a monster now. Right, on to the tragic tale at the heart of this game. Through little bits of dialogue and flashbacks, you figure out that you're playing as a man who assaulted a fella and tried to make an escape by going to work on an oil rig. Your wife is definitely against it. Your best friend and godfather of your children, who works in the canteen at the oil rig, puts in a recommendation. So you leave. Your wife writes a letter at the very beginning saying that if you don't come back, it's over. The police send a letter to your boss, and then you're fired. However, as you're about to leave, the oil rig explodes and it's stated that the drill hit something. This is where the horror and tension starts to build. It starts off as a little hint here and there, and then starts showing you the true despair as the story progresses. Examples of this despair are the lifeboats being broken, the helicopter blowing up, your best friend dying, All your friends are monsters, but even they end up dying until it finally hits home that you're not getting off this rig, but you need to make sure this otherworldly being doesn't either. It comes back around to the beginning. You get up from bed, say goodbye for the last time to your wife, and leave into the ocean. It's sad, and there's a bit of sweetness to the end as your wife has sent another letter apologising for being harsh, saying she loves you and just wants you home. There's a lot of smaller story pieces regarding your crewmates, but it's all just world building rather than anything too deep. It's a tragic tale. However, the main bits of gameplay are pretty much do chore A, now do chore B, oh no, you need to do chore C. And despite the game being very short, it feels like it drags a little. You're pretty much just changing fuses, starting generators, and doing your job as a lecky. There's also an added thing that some people may love and some people may hate. Nothing is really explained. Why were people turning into monsters? What did this thing want? Why was it in the North Sea? Did we kill it? What even was that thing? As far as my limited knowledge goes, this is true to Lovecraft themed stuff. It leaves it up in the air, which, to be fair, is probably more realistic. If this did happen in real life, no one would figure it all out in one day. It would just happen. But I know some people may really be itching to know more and have it explained. To finish this off, Still Wakes the Deep is a short but powerful horror story that is told through the format of a video game. The gameplay is sort of dull and at times dreadful, but it's used to tell a beautiful tragic tale with visuals to match. Since you guys made it all the way to the end, let me know in the comment section what your favourite Lovecraftian themed game is. I remember that I enjoyed the Call of Cthulhu game from 2018, but that's probably all I've played off the top of my head. Thanks for joining me on this more modern journey through time. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, and be sure to check back in next week for a titan of a time. See you then.